Coming up, 3 prospects the Vikings should replace Eric Kendricks with in the draft, plus a new first-round mock draft simulation. It's all coming up next on the draft edition of the Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next-level Vikings football. So join in with Pro Football Network's Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Back in the lab, another edition of the Football Party on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network, your daily breakdown of everything Minnesota Vikings, which you can now find streaming on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick devices. Just look out for and download our Locked On Sports Minnesota app there as well. That's the man, Sam Ekstrom, on Twitter, at Sam Ekstrom, co-host of the Ron Johnson Show every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Sam, it's Tuesday today. Means I'm taking over. Getting into this weekly draft edition of the Football Party. How are you feeling about the draft class now after watching some of these guys rip it up at the combine? Starting to feel real, isn't it? Like we're really in the thick of draft season now.
Yeah, this is what I talked about on the Football Party yesterday with Arif and Braun. I feel like we on this show, we almost have to come up with some new draft crushes because a lot of the dudes that you smartly identified as being ballers showed up to the combine and they were ballers They balled out so hard. I'm not sure they're going to be around at 23. I think we might have to maybe let the Kalijah Kancey dream die. I don't know if Joey Porter is going to be realistic at all. I'm not sure about Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like there's just a lot of dudes that we thought maybe they sneak to 23. They're not sneaking to 23. So I think we got to maybe reset our expectations, come up with some new names for guys that we really want to focus on.
Yeah, and the combine too, it's truly amazing because it's this time of the year on the NFL calendar where you hear a lot of experts say it's the most wild and dramatic part of the entire season because now you've got all 32 teams huddled up in one spot, all the GMs, all the coaches, all the scouts, and all the media too. And the fact that it's just a week or so before free agency hits, it makes it this perfect launching pad, if you will, for all the rumors and the buzz to start heating up with so many team executives just talking to one another. In fact, did you see Rich Eisen, his show yesterday? He gave his top 5 bombshells that he heard from the combine. They were pretty wild.
So I heard that the Packers don't want Rodgers back.
Yes, they hope Rodgers either wants to retire or get traded. Because at this point, I think they honestly just want to see what they got with Jordan Love. I really do.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that it's become a headache for them. It's unbelievable how 15 years later,
it's wild.
Rodgers has become Favre. And he might go to the Jets.
He's got to go to the Jets. He has to go to the Jets.
Yeah.
Time is just a flat circle here. History repeating itself. Yeah, that was number 2, I believe. Number 5 was Phillip Rivers. He reached out to the Dolphins and Niners. He said, when those quarterbacks went down late in the year, he said, hey, I want to come in. I want to fill in for these guys. So maybe Phillip Rivers isn't done quite yet. Number 4, I believe, was Ryan Poles, the Bears. They're already deep down the road with trade talks for the number 1 pick. Already got a plethora of options, it sounds like, meaning maybe a deal could be done sooner than later. Number 3, Ravens and Lamar, not even close to a deal, it sounds like. Sounds like things are getting ugly. And I don't know if you remember, but I had a hot take over a month ago. I said, Lamar will not play another down in Baltimore. And it just feels like maybe that could come to fruition, as wild as that sounds. You mentioned the Rodgers one. And then number 1, I'm sure you saw on Twitter as well. Don't count out Tom Brady returning to football again. Are you serious?
That would be so lame. I don't know what's lamer, that or Phillip Rivers. But
yeah, totally.
I'm not even interested anymore. I don't care.
I'm over it. Everybody's over it. And he mentioned the Dolphins. Feels like The Dolphins are like the only realistic team because his family is set up in Miami. Obviously makes sense if you're going to go play for the Dolphins, who could need a quarterback after all these Tua injuries as well. They could be moving on from him. And knowing his contract's coming up here soon, I don't think they're going to want to sign him to a major long-term deal with a bunch of guaranteed money too. What was your biggest takeaway from the Combine outside of the guys that we mentioned when you just look at the draft class as a whole? Because for me, it was like, remember, a lot of people dubbed this draft class, this is a weak class. There's not a lot of blue chips at the top. This is maybe one of the weaker classes we've seen in the last few years. It didn't feel like that after the Combine ended. Did it feel like that for you?
No, not at all. I am struck by the fact that football is becoming more and more positionless because everybody is so athletic. So quarterbacks are now running backs. They run the same speed. They're mobile. Quarterbacks are running backs. Tight ends and receivers are getting more and more interchangeable. Linebackers are so fast they could play safety or nickel. The defensive linemen, inside guys have the athletic ability to kind of be outside guys. Like everything is interchangeable nowadays. And I'm just struck by seeing these massive humans running 4.6, all of them. If you're above 5 at this point, you're a snail. I mean, everybody's running under 5 in some form or fashion, and some guys in the 4.2s, 4.3s. Football is just a game for speed now, man. And if you're fast, you can play so many different spots in this game. I'm just struck by just the year over year evolution of some of these athletes. It's crazy.
Yeah, so many to that point, so many hybrid players now. You get the Joker linebackers, for example. So many sub packages too. We've seen them in the NFL. First it was the nickel and the dime and the base defense, 4-3-3-4. Now it's the sub nickel, the 3-3-5, the bear fronts, the dime packages with maybe a corner DB at your linebacker position, like Derwin James was used for the Chargers. So yeah, to that point, you're right. The athletes every year that come out just continue to blow me away. I do want to get into 3 athletes specifically at linebacker to replace Eric Kendricks. But first, remember, every day posting a new poll over on that Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube page. So go smash the subscribe button. Leave us a comment. We're so close to hitting 5,000 subscribers now, thanks to you guys. So huge shout out to all you guys listening, helping us make that happen. And on Twitter, give us a follow too. It's at Locked On MIN. All right, Sammy, sad day yesterday seeing Eric Kendricks released to help clear some much needed cap space. And I said it all along, like, as much as I hate it, Kendricks was always the cleanest cap cut, but also one of the top big name guys on the roster. You felt like maybe in the back of your mind somewhere, he could still play good football in a new system. Maybe it was just Ed Donatell. Maybe it was just the coaching scheme. Maybe it was the play calling. It also always felt like if you're going to extend Cousins and clear some cap space, then you were probably going to find a way to keep Kendricks around because, again, you got to keep some of these guys around if you plan on playing a high level of football next year. Brian Flores needs more than just 4th and 5th round players at every position to be able to come in and make the impact you wanted when you hired him. So it's like, all right, did you see some stud linebackers that you fell in love with in Indy? Did you talk to some agents maybe and get some word of mouth who's going to be available that not only fits your scheme, but it also fits your budget? But at the end of the day, again, this was always just the cleanest cap cut casualty we saw when we looked at the cap and how it sat heading into the offseason. And I say that again, I'm referring to the fact that he had the least amount of dead money, biggest savings, almost $10 million, only 2 in dead money. That was a huge necessity for this front office to clear some much needed cap space. I mean, they started this venture going into the offseason, 26 million in the hole. Kendricks helps a ton, and he was a stud, man. I just want to take 30 seconds. I'm going to miss him. Outstanding linebacker career for the Vikings. I remember scouting him out of UCLA in 2015. Great instincts, great coverage guy. I remember thinking, man, how cool would this be to pair him up with last year's first-round pick, Anthony Barr, for the next 6-7 years? And they did it. Second-round pick, which if you remember too, Sam, that was Rick Spielman's all-star draft. Trey Waynes, Kendricks, Danielle Hunter finds this diamond in the rough, gem superstar in the 3rd round. And then Stephon Diggs 2 rounds later as well in the 5th.
And TJ Clemmings.
Of course, can't forget TJ Clemmings. Yeah, who else are we forgetting over there? Let me actually just look this up now because you said it.
Edmund Robinson.
This is what always kills me about that draft. They took Michael Pruitt 3 picks before Stephon Diggs. So they had 2 back-to-back picks. What if Diggs would have went in those next 2-3 picks? And you look back and you're like, why didn't we just take Diggs first and wait and take Michael Pruitt second? Easy to say now looking back, but that always just kills me seeing those picks so close and knowing that for whatever reason, they had Michael Pruitt higher on their draft board than Stephon Diggs. I always think that's funny. So question is, where do we go from here? I posed this question to you and Luke Braun last week on the football party. I said, what if, because he saves you by far the most, you cut Kendricks? Does that mean you feel more entitled to maybe keep Jordan Hicks around? Because remember, at the beginning of the year, we all just assumed from the moment the season ended, Jordan Hicks, he's probably gone. Save $5.5, $6 million. You both said, no, I don't want to do that. I'd rather keep Kendricks for the extra couple mil than Hicks, which makes sense in a perfect world. I asked that because it always felt like if they do cut Kendricks first, then we were going to be sitting here like we are now wondering, well, would they restructure Hicks now? Maybe at a fraction of the price, bring back a guy who statistically, Sam, I know we don't like the athleticism and he's a little slower. He had 130 tackles, 3 sacks, and someone you could probably pay 2, 3, maybe 4 million to. And now you roll with Hicks and Asamoah. Gives you a little combination of youth and speed with Asamoah, and then you got the crafty, sure tackling veteran in Hicks. So we'll see what happens there, but either way, just tough to watch a big name like Kendricks go first, isn't it? Like, can't you baby us in a little bit? Can't you warm us up with the CJ Ham or something like that? You got to go Kendricks right out the gate. And we'll see. I'm assuming, I want your take on that. I'm assuming this is the first of many big name vets to go. Maybe Thielen's next, CJ Ham, like I mentioned, etc. And also, if we look back, was this a sign, the writing on the wall? They won't extend Cousins and let him ride out the final year of the deal, because I really wonder, too, I'm thinking about the combine, the whole week that takes place. As a GM, you know Kwesi's talking to other GMs at the combine. And so I wonder if he picked up wind that maybe this Derek Carr contract and Geno Smith contract were going to look like they did. And he said to himself, man, so now I got to pay Cousins at least $40 million in an extension. Do I really want to do that? Kick the can down the road? Do you think this is a sign to start this offseason process out, clearing some cap space with Eric Kendricks and not extending Cousins? Do you think it's a sign that they will let Cousins ride out this last year of his deal?
They're not going to give Cousins a long-term extension. I think that ship has sailed.
Long meaning 3-4 years?
Yeah, I still think that the only acceptable outcome is one year. And that would save you, like last year, it saved him 14 when they did that 1 year tack on deal to his contract. So if you only save 14, you're not, you still need to cut people because you're still over the cap. So these veteran moves had to happen. The question was, is it going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4? Like there's many different paths they can go down. I don't think they're done. I mean, I think that with Kendricks, to be honest with you, Luke, I think not only is it a cap move, I think it's partly a performance move. Like, I think the two, like an easy cap move combined with some declining performance and not a good scheme fit either. Like that has to be taken into account. But I think that made this a fairly obvious cut. It gets more complicated when it's a tough cap move, like in Za'Darius Smith, for instance. Easy cap move, but a productive player. Like that's where you don't really know which way to go with that, because you could save a lot of money, but also really good player. Adam Thielen, not a very easy cap move, but he's also declining in performance. So you have harder decisions to come. I think this was probably the easier of the decisions, like you alluded to, Luke. This just made too much sense. I don't think Cousins gets a long-term extension. I think the Vikings want flexibility. They don't want to be locked in to a quarterback who's going to be into his later 30s here in a couple of years. So I think that I'm not sure that the Kendricks move and the Cousins decision are necessarily linked, though. Like, to ultimately answer your question, I don't know if this tells us anything in that regard. I just think this was inevitable.
And if they don't extend Cousins, you would think they almost have to go draft a quarterback early in this draft, I would assume, but that's a conversation for another day. I've started to make the comparison. Linebacker is a position on defense similar to running back on offense. They seem to be guys you can find on days 2 and even 3 of the draft every year for cheap that you can kind of ride out for a handful of years and go draft a new one and keep the cycle going. Just kind of wash, rinse, repeat. And while other positions on defense, like having, an elite pass rusher or a number 1 stud cover cornerback, such a premium now, so valuable in this passing league. The old school blue collar 100+ tackles a year linebacker just doesn't seem like it's as valuable as it used to be even 5-10 years ago, just because the way the game has evolved and changed so much. Now it's how well can you cover? How well can you rush the passer? Because you got to be on the field and be able to cover these big tight ends up the seam, running backs out of the flat on the wheel routes, etc. That's more valuable than racking up 100 tackles on the stat sheet. So you need to be fast, you need to be long, you need to be athletic, and you got to have guys that can cover and can line up as a dime linebacker or almost one of these joker players in the middle of the field who can do a little bit of everything. And another huge comparison I like to draw from the running backs and the linebackers is this: it's a really tough position to play from a physical standpoint when it comes to just the wear and tear of the body. Because think about it. After 5-6 years, think about the amount of just physical blows you've absorbed onto your body over and over and over again. And because there's really no way around that, your body's just going to start to break down over a period of time, isn't it? I mean, it just is what it is. It's the human element. By the time some of these linebackers get to, say, 30 years old, you're on the wrong side of your career rather quickly, and you're not just as fast or as quick or as energetic now anymore. It's easy to see why some of these guys, like Kendricks, for example, start to watch their play deteriorate so quickly once you log 6-7 years under your belt and hit that 30-year mark. So as much as I want to assume Kendricks is more maybe the Kendricks of 2019 or 2020, I think you make a great point. He's just not the same guy he used to be. And maybe it's not that black and white either. Maybe there's a little balance to it. But to see his play decline so rapidly, and then to see how many games now he's logged, and plus he's 31 years old now at the start of next season, giving that plus the big contract with no dead money, I think it always just made the most sense to cut ties with him sooner than later, knowing full well, we can find another, again, Brian Asamoah type in round 3 or 4 again this year and feel good about the linebacker unit that you're giving Brian Flores. And instead, let's use those premium picks and our salary cap money on more premium positions like defensive line, cornerback, etc. So I don't want to call it a dying position here, Sam. You still need 2 good linebackers on the field. But kind of like running back now, it's a position it feels like you can cycle through every few years, find a cheap new replacement later in the draft. You can kind of almost grind down for 4 or 5 years and then move on. That just seems to be kind of the blueprint in the NFL. Just your thoughts on the maybe lack of perceived value of the linebacker position now? Is it kind of a dying breed?
Calling it the running back of the defense, I think, is a good analogy, because if you think of positional value, it bears out that you would rather have good defensive line play, good cornerback play, and even good safety play before linebacker play. And the position is evolving too. I mean, no longer can you just be a big bodied tackler type. You have to cover. You have to cover. So these guys need to have legs to get down the field. Same deal with cornerbacks. Like, there's not a lot of 30-year-old cornerbacks that can do the things they used to do when they were 25. And the same is going to be true of linebackers. If they can't cover, they're not going to be effective once they lose that step, right? So I think that's why we're seeing this evolution to the quicker linebackers who maybe can hold on to their speed a little deeper into their careers. And, we might see a couple of speeding bullets out there. When it was the Bash brothers with Kendricks and Barr, we're going to see a couple burners now with Asamoah and potentially someone else who's extremely quick.
Yeah, maybe a little thunder and lightning. Coming up, I'm going to give you 3 prospects the Vikings should look to draft to replace Eric Kendricks. But first, don't forget we're presented by FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Locked On, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Sam, T-Wolves are red hot, winning 3 in a row on the West Coast. They're now 2-point favorites tonight versus the Sixers. Get in on all the action at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. And remember, if you're a new customer, try out the no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Download the easy-to-use FanDuel app and get your winnings instantly. Money lines, parlays, prop bets. FanDuel's got everything you need to close out the NBA season's final stretch. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Locked On. All right, Sam, before we get into the mock draft, let's talk some linebackers in the draft who kind of balled out, maybe flashed some serious tools at the combine, who I really like, just to give the people listening a taste of who's out there, a few names to jot down, put in the back of your minds for draft weekend. How does that sound?
Sounds good. I've got some notes myself.
All right, well, if we're going to talk linebackers, you got to start at the top. Mr. Do-It-All, the Swiss Army knife, Trenton Simpson from Clemson. Totally think it's reasonable he's still on the board at 23 because, again, just this decrease in perceived value the league has taken on the linebacker position as a whole could see him drop a little bit. We've seen some of these joker linebackers come in with a lot of hype before, like Isaiah Simmons a few years ago. Another Clemson kid, by the way, goes to the Cardinals with the top 10 pick. And to be honest, hasn't really lived up to the hype of a top 10 pick. And so I'll just say this, Sam, if you're going to draft players like Simmons, you better have a game plan of how you're going to use them before you even bring them in. You got to have some long conversations with Brian Flores about what that's going to look like and how you're going to maximize him in your defense. Because so far, it just seems like the Cardinals never really knew the best ways to maximize his talents on like a game-to-game, week-to-week basis. And I think you really got to take advantage of their versatility, being able to blitz one down, being able to drop back in coverage and fly around the field on the next down. That's how you get your money's worth out of these guys. And Simpson can do all that and more. You just turn on the tape. This guy honestly looks like a defensive back, the way he just flies around and not just in between the hashes like most linebackers, but all over the field. And I think that's just worth its weight in gold now. As you just brought up, you got to be able to have linebackers that can match up with bigger tight ends, running backs, even wide receivers now, sometimes on these shallow crossing routes or whatever it may be. Simpson had the second fastest 40 time for a linebacker in Indy with a 4.43, which, you know, Sam, I'm watching this combine. I'm on Twitter. I'm reading, you know, some fan remarks and comments and reviews. It seems like we just downplay how fast some of these guys are now. And unless they're in like the 4.3s, we just brush it off like, no big deal. 4.43 for a 235-pound linebacker is blazing, Sam. And it's that kind of speed that really makes him unique and special and why he's going to be drafted in the first round. And speed wins in the NFL now. He's got that in spades. If he's there at 23, I just think you got to think long and hard about it. And I know I just said, oh, you can find these guys later in the draft, but it's tough to find this special of an athlete. And if they build a good game plan, again, with Brian Flores and he signs off on it, then you got to feel like you're getting a special player in the middle of your defense. You know, just the thought, just thinking about pairing him up with Brian Asamoah, man, the things you could do on defense schematically and how dangerous that would be for opposing offenses. Your thoughts drafting a linebacker just this early, again, after the conversation we just had, and knowing that, again, I think I can find you a serviceable guy in rounds 3 or 4. But is Simpson too special? What kind of notes you got on him?
Yeah, we're going to learn a lot about how Kwesi and, you know, Flores operate. Because, like, remember when the last coaching staff came in, what was the first thing they did? Got 2 amazing linebackers.
That's right.
Barr first year, Kendricks second year. They said, okay, we're set. Does this regime care about a position that, as we've laid out, isn't as trendy in today's NFL unless you find some very high-end ones? Like if you find Pro Bowl players at any position, it's going to help your defense. Trenton Simpson. Now, Luke, let me quiz you, and you might know this off the top of your head because that's the kind of guy you are with the draft. Brian Asamoah, his 40 time. And we agree that Brian Asamoah is very fast and looks very fast when playing football. What do you think his 40 time was?
Was he a 4.51, 4.52 kind of guy?
4.56.
Oh, wow.
Brian Asamoah,
Okay.
very good guess. And Simpson 4.43, and another guy I'm sure we'll talk about, Papo, even faster. Like, that's the kind of speed the Vikings would have next to each other. Asamoah, who's incredibly fast, and a guy even quicker than him right next to him. Simpson is a really just clean prospect, man. I mean, he's still 21. He was very productive. He was strong at the combine. He was fast at the combine. Seems like the whole package.
And here's the thing, too. You bring up Brian Asamoah, and I'm glad you did. 4.56, good explosion numbers. Well, Asamoah comes in at 226, 6 foot. Simpson, not only taller, he's coming in 10 pounds heavier and running even faster. So this just rare combination, again, of just size, speed, athleticism. That's the big knock as we get into a lot of these speedy, undersized linebackers. Yeah, they're fast. They can fly around, probably going to be good in pass coverage with keeping up with guys. But do they have the length? Do they have the size to not only fill the gaps in the running game, but to be able to match up against bigger linebackers? That's what makes Simpson so unique. Not only faster than guys like Brian Asamoah, but he's got the size to go along with it. You mentioned Owen Papo. Yes, Simpson was fast, but Owen Papo, he was the fastest linebacker. We both mentioned him on the show, feels like every week for the last month now, Sam. Even before the combine, I told you he was on Bruce Feldman's freak list, being fast and strong as an ox. You already know it's Owen Papo from Auburn, one of my favorite draft crushes. And I knew he was going to run fast, but 4.39 at 225, like that's DK Metcalf kind of thing. Good Lord, that is blazing. Of all the linebackers, Papo tested fastest 40 time, fastest 10-yard split, was top 5 in both vertical and broad jump. And number
bench.
1 linebacker in bench reps with 29. It just gives you an idea of how strong he is and how much punch he can pack when he's on the field. Also, and this goes just way under the radar more than it should, team captain at Auburn and started as a freshman. So anytime you're a captain and starting as a freshman at an SEC program, you got my full attention. So just that combination, speed, strength, and then you throw in this leadership quality as well. That's a coach's dream right there. And so you're probably thinking, all right, the way I'm selling him right now, Luke, what is he going, number 1 overall? Good Lord, you're pumping this guy up a lot. He's probably a guy you can get outside the top 50, 60 picks because he is undersized again. 6'2", only 225, shorter arms, just not your ideal linebacker frame. So he's not a guy teams are going to use a premium pick on by any means. And plus, kind of caught the injury bug a little bit during his collegiate career, only played 5 games as a junior, bad leg injury. He also just seemed to lack some big play instincts for how special of an athlete he was. You thought there would be more splash plays on tape. That's all. So it was surprising because he's clearly got all the tools you dream of, but for whatever reason, kind of had a hard time putting it all together after a great freshman season, by the way, at Auburn. But again, great tackler, 5-star recruit coming out of high school. You're adding another Brian Asamoah type athlete to mold, let fly around in a Brian Flores system. If he's there at 87, which I truly think he could be, I think he's a guy you'd love to pair with Brian Asamoah. All of a sudden, you hit the reset button going from these slow-footed veterans, Kendricks, Jordan Hicks. All of a sudden, you got blazing speed, explosion to go with it. Asamoah and Papo. Talk about a 180 at the position. That would just feel great from a youth and team building standpoint if you're Kwesi. You know a lot about Papo as well. So I'm sure you weren't surprised at his combine numbers. In fact, we were even texting each other a little bit like two proud parents. He was making us proud. We've called him out so much. But with Asamoah already on the roster, here's my question. Do you really want to double down on these smaller, undersized, but athletic traits? Or would you rather get somebody that can complement him more as a true stand-up, prototypical NFL linebacker with more size? Do you really care at this point, the way the game's being played? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I am far more concerned with pass coverage than run defense.
Okay.
And I wouldn't disqualify players from being good tacklers just because they're a little undersized. And I mean, we have seen the Vikings get burned a little bit by this. Like Troy Dye, undersized, not a good tackler. Didn't work out there. But I don't think there are a lot of cornerbacks on the Vikings roster that have been very good tacklers. Cam Dantzler is a very good tackler, and he's a lightweight. right? So you don't need to be a bad tackler because you're undersized. And hey, running backs are kind of getting smaller as well. Like as this game evolves, not many Leroy Hordes or Mike Allstotts running the ball anymore. So you need to be able to keep up with those running backs too, because a lot of them are scat backs. A lot of them are 5'10", 180, and they just try to shift their way away from you, and you need quick linebackers to be able to just get your hands on them too. So I'm okay with an undersized pairing. I'm sure you would still have a bigger body in your base package. And maybe, like we said, it's all about sub packages. So maybe they're not always on the field together, but on third downs, yeah, I think you do put them both on the field together. So it is an interesting equation, Luke, because, Simpson, maybe a first round guy. He's a little younger. He's a little more productive than Papo. Papo, little bit more athletic than Simpson, but smaller, older, less productive in college. So there's an exchange there, because you get him a couple rounds later, so there's better value, and you don't have to use a first-round pick. So between the two, man, I'd be torn as to who I would want on my team because I think their resumes are both really awesome.
No, you're right about that. You made me think of Nick Bolton, came out 2 years ago, goes in that 50 to 60 range, only 6 foot, 230 pounds, had a decent combine. He had 180 tackles last year, Sam. He's had almost in 2 years, almost 300 tackles in his first 2 seasons. And again, you talk about, it's got to be at least a discussion, but I'm not too worried about these undersized, smaller linebackers being good tacklers and being good run defenders. Nick Bolton, prime example of that, only 6 foot, 230 pounds, led the league in tackles last year with 180. All right, last one I want to mention. This guy would be the perfect complement and balance to Brian Asamoah. Jack Campbell from Iowa, another guy we brought up on the show. I mean, he's an Iowa linebacker, saying, what more do you want me to say? 6'5", 250, big, strong, tough as nails, more the old school, blue collar, bring the lunch pail to work, clock in for the next 7-8 years. This guy's going to be rock solid, dependable when it does come to fitting in the run gaps, wrapping up, tackling in the box. He blew me away at the combine, Sam, and it turns out he's not slow-footed like these old school guys on paper like I thought he would be. Ran a 4.65 at 250 pounds, which is not slow by any means, at least for that size. But honestly, it was really the agility and acceleration drills that just floored me. Dude had the fastest 3-cone of any linebacker by a mile, 6.74. Next guy was 7 seconds flat. He had the fastest 20-yard shuttle of any linebacker by a full 1/10 of a second with 4.24. And cherry on top, he was top 3 linebacker in both vertical and both broad jump as well, showing that lower body explosion. So if you follow Kwesi's draft history, and I know we only got 1 year to go off of, but it's the explosion numbers that he really covets. Campbell has the goods in that department, along with that short area quickness. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds in the short area quickness and this explosion, but also you're getting 6'5", 250 pound, prototypical, hard-nosed, Big Ten linebacker, Dick Butkus Award winner for nation's best linebacker. That basically says it all. Simpson and Papo, the speed demons for sure. Campbell, probably the best pure linebacker of the group. And maybe he's never a Pro Bowler. Maybe he's not on SportsCenter top 10. But if you're just building a team for the value where you can get him, he's a great pick anywhere past the top 50 picks, in my opinion. So I would love to pair him up with the speed of Brian Asamoah because I just feel like they're going to complement each other really well. Where does Campbell fit in for you with the trio now? Simpson, Papo, and Jack Campbell.
Yeah, well, first of all, I owe Jack Campbell an apology. On a previous episode of this show, I slandered his pass catching or his pass coverage ability.
I remember that.
And it made sense to me because completion percentage against him was sky high. But, I dug a little more into this, and the yards per reception is so low, and the passer rating against him is so low. From the looks of it, it looks like he's just giving up checkdowns, and making the tackle. Doesn't seem like he's really getting burned in pass coverage necessarily, and his PFF coverage grade would bear that out. In that last year, he was actually a top 3 coverage linebacker in all of college football. So even though he gave up almost every reception where he was targeted, it doesn't seem like those were really big plays. Those were like 6 yards per reception. Passer rating against him was 70. Had a pick against Minnesota and a little run back, if you remember that.
Against our guy Tanner Morgan?
I think it was Athan. I think that was an Athan game. Yeah. Okay. But that's our guy now, though.
Team learning Athan. Experience for the young kid. You're going up. This is the guys you're going up against in the Big Ten. Guys who are going to be top 50, top 60 picks at linebacker. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I owe Jack an apology. I think he's probably a better pass coverage guy than I gave him credit for. 4.65 still does make you wonder like how he would fare against some of those more athletic tight ends and running backs in today's game. And maybe he's not a 3-down linebacker quite yet. Maybe he's got to grow into that. And I don't know if I don't know if his game would last into his late 20s or 30s like we talked about. But yeah, if the value's right, I could see him definitely fitting in somewhere on the defense. I don't quite know where. Tell me which round he's getting picked, and I could give you, a better indication.
That's the thing. It's tough after this combine now. Such a great combine performance to try and guess where he's going to go. Don't think you can wait until pick 87, Vikings 3rd-round pick, but also don't think you need to use a 1st-round pick on him either. So getting a mid to late 2nd-rounder maybe in a trade back feels like the sweet spot, but either way, yeah, Jack Campbell from Iowa. It's hard not to come away really impressed with the kid. Just again, kind of tough to gauge exactly where this guy's going to go. If you tell me it's going to cost a 1st for Simpson, a 2nd for Campbell, let's say, and a 3rd, maybe even 4th for Papo, I just think the GM in me says, give me the value of Papo, let Flores develop him, let me take those early picks, use them elsewhere in a more premium position, like cornerback, like defensive line. But having said that, of course, I'd be thrilled to land any 3 of those and put them next to Brian Asamoah any way I can.
Boy, I think if I'm ranking them, I think I would go Papo for the value, Simpson for the potential high ceiling star quality, and Campbell probably my number 3 if we're power ranking the 3.
Yeah, and I think that just goes to show the value and how much stock we have to put in guys who can cover. Guys in pass coverage. And of the 3, I think we both feel the least confident with Jack Campbell. I think he's more dominant on 1st and 2nd down, but again, in pass coverage, maybe of the 3, a little bit more of a liability. All right, coming up, we're getting into our latest mock draft to see who the Vikings could land with their 1st-round pick. But first, a quick thank you for making the Football Party and Locked On Minnesota your first listen of the day. Now make Locked On Sports Today your second listen right after this. Peter Bukowski brings you the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes or less. Get the analysis and opinions before anyone else with our local and national experts and insiders. Locked On Sports Today podcast, available on YouTube and wherever you find your podcasts. All right, Sammy. You know I love me a good mock draft on a cold Tuesday morning. Pull that PFF mock draft simulator up. Let's go alternating picks. I'll give you first crack at it. Kick things off with Ryan Poles and the Bears up top. Let's make this semi-quick, kind of rapid fire. We'll put 60 seconds on the clock just so we have enough time to get to the Vikings selection and just break down their best options together, what the board may look like when Kwesi and company are on the clock April 27th. We can give, each pick a quick 30-second breakdown, maybe even less, just an explanation of what we're seeing, why we like that player, the team fit.
I'm already going. I'm looking at the Chicago Bears pick 1. I think we got to deal that pick. Like, let's just keep it realistic here. So Colts need a quarterback. We're not going to overthink it. Colts give up 4, Bears give them 1, and then the Colts add on 1 next year, 1 the year after.
All right, maybe a 3rd this year? Take that second out.
7. Got to take that out.
There you go.
Okay, a 3rd, 2 future firsts, offer the trade. It's accepted. Boom. And the Colts are picking.
Chris Ballard is a traits man. He loves the traits. It's not who you are now, it's who you could be. So knowing that, I got 2 quarterbacks in mind, but I'm interested to see where, what direction you go.
Well, I know how you feel about Will Levis to the Colts. I think that you are rooting for that to happen because that would be, that'd be good for your brand. But
right.
I'm going to go with Bryce Young. I'm not going to go too wild here. We're going to stay chalky. Bryce Young.
I get it.
Yep.
Safe. Maybe not the sexiest. We'll see. Trust me. I know his stock's down right now, per se, compared to everybody else who ripped it up, all his peers. But come his pro day, his stock and his juice will fly back up after he rips it up at his pro day, too. All right. Number 2, Houston Texans. I got to go quarterback, obviously. I'm a Will Levis guy. CJ Stroud ripped it up, though, at the combine. I think if you're asking me what I think the Texans will do, I think they'll take CJ Stroud. So let's go CJ Stroud. That's what I think what will happen. If I was running the show, I would take a different guy. Let's just put it that way. Cardinals at 3. This is where things get a little interesting and wild. Nobody talks about the Cardinals trading back. Nobody. Everybody talks about all these other teams trading back, trading forward. Cardinals seem to just, at least in all the mock drafts and what the experts are saying, they just stand pat at 3. You would think with how bad the roster is, they would be picking up the phone as well.
Yeah, and it's not like they need to stay put to get a quarterback either, because I think they're still committed to Kyler.
Right.
It is a little messy with Jalen Carter because of his situation. Like what's going to come of that, and is he going to be the guy? So I'm going to go one beneath that. I'm going to say just the Cardinals stand pat, just to keep it a little simpler. Will Anderson Jr., the edge from Bama.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how far Jalen Carter drops in this process once a consensus top 5 pick. All right, Bears back on the clock. If this was the real world, Ryan Poles would be trading back again. I'm just going to assume that Jalen Carter maybe figures out a lot of this mess 8 weeks from now. He kind of cleans up the resume, so to speak, in the off-the-field questions. Easier said than done. This guy could fall. I'm going to say right now, he could fall out of the first round for all we know. But just given where we're at, Chicago Bears, they need a blue chip defensive player. Give me Jalen Carter.
All right. I love how PFF lists the team needs for every team, and the Bears is like every single position.
Everything. Yeah, they can't fit anything more in there.
Seahawks on the clock. They don't need a quarterback anymore, just extended Geno Smith. They're looking, probably need a good offensive lineman, but I don't think there's any tackles I would take at number 5.
At 5, no. They drafted 2 solid tackles last year, too. I think interior, maybe a guy like Skoronski would make a lot of sense, projected to move inside at the next level, but that's still too early for 5 for me.
How about this? This is a little radical because you think of the Seahawks as ground and pound, Kenneth Walker, Pete Carroll. But now that they've committed to Geno, they got to get him some weapons. So they are going to go with the guy who's going to run an absurd 40 at his pro day. Quentin Johnston will rocket up the boards, and he will be a wide receiver, the first taken off the board to Seattle.
Wow. Have not heard Johnston and the Seattle connection yet, but you can never have enough good weapons. Tyler Lockett getting a little bit older. Johnston, clearly my number 1 wide receiver in this draft. That would be very interesting. Again, to your point, to help Geno get some weapons. All right, Lions. Jared Goff, they got a guy who you could bring in, a young quarterback, I should say, let him sit for a year. Exactly what Anthony Richardson needs to do. This guy just is not going to drop out of the top 6 picks. I'm just telling you. His combine was too good. Is he Cam Newton? Is he Lamar Jackson? Is he Dante Culpepper, Sam? I'm not sure, but the traits are too good to pass up on. Get your succession plan in place. This was an extra bonus pick from last year from the Rams, from the Goff trade anyways. Get Anthony Richardson in your building. Lions could be scary for the next decade.
That is the scariest outcome for the Vikings for sure.
Yeah.
So now we've got, this is where the real run on quarterbacks, like this is where they're all gone before 10, because Lions maybe, Raiders for sure, unless they get Rodgers, Falcons, Desmond Ritter's not, I don't know if he's their future, even though I liked him last year. Panthers,
Lamar's going to Atlanta.
Lamar an option. And I think I'm going to assume Rodgers to the Jets. That's where all the buzz is right now, which means the Raiders don't have anybody. They go Will Levis.
I like it. Panthers are going to have to move up to go get their quarterback, which they desperately want to do as well. Falcons, all right, they had the least amount of sacks last year. Give me Tyree Wilson, long, lanky, freaky athlete, very raw, but I like him getting into Atlanta, helping that pass rush out.
Panthers have missed their chance at a quarterback, so they could realistically trade down here, but we're going to make the pick. This is where the cornerback...
Wait a minute. How about Hendon Hooker? No love for my boy Hendon? Too early?
I know he's your boy.
Probably too early.
And he had, like, is he even doing a pro day? He's still rehabbing, right? So
he's
there's no new information coming in on Hooker that's going to really move him up in the board. So it might be a little early, man.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I think this is where the cornerback run starts. I mean, now that the quarterbacks are gone, you start to see those talented first-round cornerbacks go off the board. So let's give them Witherspoon, the top corner, arguably in the draft.
Eagles, along with the Lions and Seahawks, both have 2 first-round picks. This team was in the Super Bowl last year. This is a total luxury pick. You take a swing on a guy that normally you probably wouldn't if you're just staying in the confines of your draft board and draft plan. Bijan Robinson in the backfield with Jalen Hurts, with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert in that offensive line would be a cheat code, almost unstoppable. It makes me sick. Now, I know a lot of people, like myself, are not in the category of, let's take a running back in the first round. Bijan is special. Best running back prospects in Saquon Barkley, if not even better. I think you could use him in the passing game as well. Give me Bijan Robinson. How about that offense with Jalen Hurts and Bijan? That's scary.
Whew. Look out. They're going to be hungry too, not winning that Super Bowl. So the Titans, I assume, are moving on from Tannehill. They commit to Malik Willis. I think that's coming sooner than later. They got to protect the man. Maybe they go with Peter Skoronski, big tackle. Let's get an offensive lineman some love. Skoronski from Northwestern.
Titans love their offensive lineman, man. If Vrabel had his way, he'd be taking an offensive lineman with every pick. All right, Texans, we got our quarterback. We need to get him a weapon. Johnston already off the board. Give me Jackson Smith and Jigba. This guy could be better. It sounds crazy to say. He could be better than Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. That's how good he is. The Ohio State receivers coming out are just so polished, being coached by Brian Hartline. Feel really good about the Texans. Just new start to their era with a young quarterback, C.J. Stroud, and his teammate, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Let's bring the connection back there, Sam.
Jets just acquired Aaron Rodgers, not for real, but I'm just anticipating that. They've got Sauce Gardner. They've kind of got their secondary figured out. Boy, this is interesting. I think they might just get another toy to play with on defense. How about Kalijah Kancey? That's a big riser post combine. Put him on the interior there and let him work. Just build a monster defense to support Rodgers. Kancey at 13.
Boy, I love him. I really love him. Undersized, but man, can he get after the passer. And nothing beats interior pass rush. Nothing. All right, Patriots on the clock. Gonzalez, Witherspoon, flip a coin. It's going to be pick your poison, 1 and 1A. Give me Gonzalez, though. I think Bill Belichick will love to get him into the building.
Rodgers turning to Jordan Love. They always need weapons, but I don't know if this is a great spot to go receiver. I don't know anything about Dalton Kincaid, but I feel like they
I'm
can't
surprised
ignore.
They have him higher than Michael Mayer, who seems to be the consensus Notre Dame #1 tight end. Didn't have a great combine, a little bit slower, a little bit lighter. But yeah, a lot of people like Kincaid. A lot of people love this tight end class just in general as a whole. In fact, Daniel Jeremiah said at the combine, this is the best tight end class he's seen in 10 years. So it's deep. It's rich at the top. I think you could probably wait a little bit if you wanted to. But if you really like Kincaid or Michael Mayer, can't go wrong either way.
Is Bakhtiari on the way out?
Yeah.
Like, if not like soon, know, this year. I feel like they got to protect Jordan Love too. What about Paris Johnson Jr., Ohio State to Green Bay?
All right, Washington needs a cornerback. Joey Porter Jr. just makes too much sense. Almost lasted into the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everybody's connecting the dots there. He doesn't make it. Had a great combine, long, lanky, physical. Got the swag that you love your cornerbacks play with. Joey Porter Jr.
Steelers going after the next Polamalu. Brian Branch, safety, Alabama.
Probably the best tackler in the entire class. He's missed 4 tackles his entire Alabama career. And think about it. You play at Alabama, you're playing teams like Georgia and Auburn and Miami, Florida. Tons of great talent. 4 missed tackles his entire career. Has a little bit of nickel cornerback versatility there too. Really like that. So the Lions got Anthony Richardson. You know Dan Campbell wants to continue to build the defensive side of the ball. Lucas Van Ness or Nolan Smith are both calling my name here. Let's go with Lucas Van Ness. Seems like more of a Dan Campbell kind of guy. Didn't start one game at Iowa. Wasn't because he wasn't good or talented. That's just the way Iowa does it. They always start their seniors first. Lucas Van Ness, great combine, though. Love to see him pair up with Aiden Hutchinson for the next few years. That's scary.
Buccaneers presumably headed for a reset, rebuild. So when you're starting to rebuild your team, you need some foundational pieces. I don't think you go tight end. I kind of think you go cornerback. Like, I think that's a position where, you You build someone up. You work them into your defense for a couple of years, and then when you're ready to win again, they are hitting their prime. Deonte Banks, big combine, would have loved him on the Vikings, but the Bucs swoop in and snipe him, Deonte Banks.
Good pick. So you took Johnston, the receiver for the Seahawks, at pick 5. I know a lot of people are connecting the dots to Tyree Wilson, the Texas Tech edge. So we missed out on an edge. They still need one. Let's go Nolan Smith, who ran sub 4.4 at his 40-yard dash in Indy at the Combine. Maybe the biggest winner of any defensive player in Indy at Lucas Oil Stadium. Nolan Smith. It's going to be exciting to see how high he rises in the ranks now.
Chargers on the clock. Vikings are getting nervous. Are they going to take? I think you just got to keep giving Justin Herbert weapons. This is an arms race in the AFC West against the Kansas City Chiefs. And you've got to make sure that offense is top 5 in the league. So I think they get another wideout. They're choosing between Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison. They're going to go with Jordan Addison is going to be the pick at number 21.
Wow. And you know who the Ravens are going to take with the very next pick? And by the way, we don't even know. They may be in the quarterback market by the time this draft rolls around. That's how crazy this could be. And they may have multiple first-round picks to play with. If they did trade Lamar, they could move all the way up and grab an Anthony Richardson or anybody else they wanted. But as it stands now, they got to take Zay Flowers. They got to get some offensive weapons to help out Lamar Jackson at this point. Zay Flowers, electric lightning bug. Reminds you a little bit of Antonio Brown. That'd be exciting. All right, here we go, Sam. Pick 23, Vikings are on the clock. Who's just the best available? I didn't think Brzee or Miles Murphy would last this long, to be completely honest. Josh Downs, your boy, is there. Some other good defensive prospects here. I know cornerback is kind of the default position. We always assume they will go, but I don't know here. Emmanuel Forbes came in really light, 170 pounds, I want to say, maybe even less. Let's check this out.
And you liked Forbes before the Combine.
I did. Great ball skills. Outstanding. But boy, so small. I got to look him up here real quick.
This isn't an unbelievable board for the Vikings. They're not going to take Kincaid. I think Brzee, that name pops off the board a little bit here. I think
Brzee or Murphy almost just, let's not force corner. Emmanuel Forbes, 4'3", 540, Sam, at 6'1". He's tall. He's only 166 pounds. You're going to draft another undersized corner from Mississippi State to go along with Cam Dantzler? Great ball skills, though. Had 4 interceptions last year. He's got a lot of tools you love. I just know, listen to Brian Flores on PA down in Indy, his little interview. First thing he said, we need guys at corner who can tackle. Can this 166-pounder tackle, stick his nose in there in the run game? I'm just not sure. I don't know.
Miles Murphy is a production machine. Brian Brzee is more of a project. I think the Vikings would prefer, for where they're at in their trajectory, I think they need someone who can come in and produce. I'm going to take Miles Murphy, the Clemson Tiger.
Love it. Don't think you can go wrong there either way. Normally, again, we'd look at some trade backs there, but just gives you a great idea, just a good rundown and an example of how the board may fall on draft night, which options the Vikings could have when they're on the clock at pick 23. Obviously, of course, free agency going to play a huge domino effect into all this as well, and that's coming up just right around the corner too. Interesting to see how this played out, though. Brzee and Miles Murphy there. Cornerback, obviously the position we assume, but Emmanuel Forbes, after seeing that run on corner, no Joey Porter Jr., just makes it tough, Sam. Just makes it tough. Well done, per usual, Sam. I think the Vikes need to get us in the war room this year. Seriously. Let me at least just run the phone line so we get full value for our trades this time around before the fans lose their minds after, we trade inside the division again. I don't think they can handle that 2 years in a row. That's all I'm saying. What do you think?
You'll answer the phone as John Lynch says, hey, do you think Kirk would come here? We will give you Trey Lance and a 2. You would answer the phone, and what would you say?
Punch it. Punch it.
Decision.
Punch it. Yeah, I can restart the quarterback machine, pay a rookie money, plus I get a second rounder, plus I get a guy with mobility. I don't know. Am I oversimplifying it, Sam? What did you think?
Trey Lance looked really fun in the joint practices last year. That's all I'm going to say. I would love to have that.
And the 2 games he did play in, one was in Soldier Field in the pouring rain monsoon, and the other he got hurt in the first 30 minutes of the game. So that's all I'm saying. So, yeah, I would think long and hard about that. Don't count out Lamar Jackson being traded. All of a sudden, the Ravens are going to have a boatload of draft picks, and they're going to be moving up into the top 10, top 5 in the draft and trying to be a big player there. What if they moved all the way up to number 1 and just gave the Bears a king's ransom there? Between that and then watching the Lions just draft Anthony Richardson, not looking fun right now. That's not a fun draft weekend for Vikings fans there, Sam.
No, the teams that have been at the cellar, they're coming out of the cellar. Look out.
The winds of change are in the air in the NFC North. Going to be a lot of fun, though, to watch these next 7-8 weeks unfold between free agency, who the Vikings go sign and retain, and then obviously the draft starts April 27th. Going to be a lot of fun, Sam. Can't wait to do it. All right, that's a wrap today. Remember, like, rate, review, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Join us every day for another episode of The Football Party, your one-stop shop breakdown of everything Minnesota Vikings. We're a podcast too, free and available, all platforms. Subscribe, drop us that 5-star review, and find us now streaming on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick devices. Just look out for and download our Locked On Sports Minnesota app there as well. That's the man, Sam Ekstrom, on Twitter, at Sam Ekstrom. Check him out every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, co-host of the Ron Johnson Show. Thanks for tuning in to The Football Party, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. We're back tomorrow with the mailbag edition of The Football Party. But until then, I'm Luke Inman on Twitter, at Luke_Spinman, signing out.